Hey dudes and dudettes, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Today is another one of the Simon Hurley Create monthly challenges, and today I'm going to show you a fun watercolor technique, but the theme for this month is going to be Christmas cards. So just create anything with your Christmas card and use the hashtag #SHCreatedToCreate so we can see all of your amazing projects on social media and pick one to win a prize for next month. Alright, without further ado, let's get into this fun stamping technique. Alright, so for this technique, I'm going to be using the Brilliant Baubles stamp set because you want to find one where the images are kind of mirrored on both sides, or at least have a pretty similar looking image. And these ones are great because there's lots of circles and different shapes that are symmetrical and will work really great for this technique. Alright, so I'm just going to peel out some of the stamps that I want, and you'll notice with photopolymer stamps, they of course have this larger side and then they have this side with the design on it. Usually this sticks to your acrylic blocks, but today we're going to flip it and stamp with this in the very beginning to do kind of a fun coloring technique. Alright, so once I got these lined up, I'm going to take my MISTI stamping tool lid and you'll see these kind of start sticking to it. That photopolymer material is kind of sticky on both sides, and that's just going to pick up the stamps easily. Now if your stamps are a little bit dirty, I actually had to clean these off first with a little bit of stamp cleaner. That gets rid of any ink residue and makes them sticky again. And if they're not particularly sticky, you can always use a little bit of water too, and that's going to get rid of any dust on the surface and help them re-stick. Alright, so now it's time to ink these up. I'm starting off with a little bit of Midnight Snack, and I actually find that this side of the stamp takes the ink really well, surprisingly. And then of course I'll go in with a little bit of Crown Me, but I guess it should since it's all kind of that photopolymer material no matter what side you use, but it takes the ink really nicely. And then I'll go in with a little bit of Game Over on the bottom of this one, and I just kind of make sure that I'm not touching the other ornament, but I'm not too worried about getting any colors mixing because it'll kind of turn into a fun watercolor in the end. So I'll add a little bit of Bee Sting, and then last but not least I'll throw a little bit of Guppy in here, so we've got some nicely multicolored shaded ornaments. Alright, now when it comes to stamping, you could totally stamp it just like this, but I like to add a little bit of water to help these stamp. So I've sprayed down some water to it, and then we'll bring it over to my stark white cardstock and stamp it down. And I'm just going to give a little bit of pressure. The reason why I like to do this in my MISTI is because then I can make sure that I can just let it kind of sit here and absorb into the cardstock before I lift it back up. I use my stark white cardstock because it absorbs a little faster than other cardstocks, so I'll lift it off the surface and it's already sunken in there, and I just love how this looks once it's all complete. Especially when you add that water, it gives it a little bit more texture and gets that color really moving around on the surface of that stamp. So I want it to stop moving, so I'm just going to heat set it quickly here before we move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step is to take the stamps, this time with the photopolymer design down that I want to stamp, and I'm just going to look over the top and line it up with my image here. So that we have the first one lined up, and it should line up perfectly. If it's a mirrored image, you could always use images that are a little off too. It's not going to be too noticeable because it's just kind of a fun way to color it in a more abstract way. So I'll pick these up with my stamping tool, and then let's get to stamping the design. For this I have two options. I can stamp it down with a black ink and get a really stunning look like this that gives a lot of contrast. But if I want to make it a little bit more elegant, I can go in with my powder bag and start to do some embossing. Now with this, I've really heat set this to make sure it's super nice and dry because you want there to be no moisture on the surface when you go in and stamp that design on top. So make sure you heat set it to get any moisture that's still in that cardstock out. And I always like to just go in, and you can test the cardstock by just putting some embossing powder on, and if it comes right off of the surface, that's how you know that you've got all the moisture out of your cardstock and you're ready to get going. Alright, so time to ink this up with a little bit of clear sticky embossing ink. Give it some good pressure. Ooh, I gotta remember to pull out my rag and do this. It helps to give good pressure on the surface of your MISTI. And then I'll go in and sprinkle over top the embossing powder. And in this situation, I'm just using white here because I thought it would look nice and elegant, but you could use gold or whatever color you want to really bring in the Christmas spirit. To finish off this card, I'm going to lay some of these branches down and do a little bit of stamping with this at the top of my card. For this, I'll start out with a little bit of Later Gator and ink my branch up and stamp it down. And then I'm going to go in and do a little bit of shading as well to darken this up a little bit. To do the shading, I'm going to go in with a little bit of fake plant and my blending tool. And I shared this in a life hacks video with a link up in the top right corner, but I like to just go on with my blending tool to give a little bit more of a subtle shading effect. That way there's not like a harsh line where you shaded it. And if you're stamping in your MISTI stamping tool, you could do it several times to build up that layer in a more subtle way than do it all at once when you're stamping. And I'm just repeating those same exact steps with doing the shading and stamping so that we get a couple different branches at the top that we can hang the ornaments from. So to finish off the card, I'm going to stamp the little strings to hang the ornaments, and I'll do this with a little bit of clear sticky embossing ink, and then I'm going to emboss it in liquid platinum embossing powder, which is a really great metallic, but you could totally tie your own strings too to make it a little bit more 3D. Then I'll sprinkle on my embossing powder over the top and tap off any excess. If you have any embossing powder where you don't want it, another great tip is just to go in with a paintbrush that's dry and just remove any of the excess flakes. And sometimes it just sticks to like stamping or areas where you might not want it, so just removing those with a paintbrush is super easy. Alright, now to stamp the sentiment, I'm just going to stamp down the sentiment from the set that says, "I love hanging with you." I love this kind of punny sentiment for these ornaments, and I think it'll definitely make anybody smile, and you can give it to your friend even before Christmas, which I think is fun. So I'll just stamp this down using some of the jet black Archival ink so that it is the main thing that stands out on the card. To add a little bit of color to the card, I'm going to go into Clear Skies and take it on a little blending brush so we can go in from the edge and just create a really light and soft color in on the edge. I'm just trying to add a little bit of color and interest to the card, but not make it too busy. And so this is just a little way to get kind of a soft color of halo around these ornaments. I'll finish the card off by adding it to a Kraft card base here, and that completes today's card. I love the look of Kraft cardstock on Christmas cards, and I just think this technique with the reverse stamping is such a fun way to color things in, get them done really quickly, but give it a cool new effect. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and like I said, be sure to share all of your fun Christmas cards using Simon Hurley Create products this month, and use the hashtag SHCreated to create so we can see. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button down below so you never miss another card making and crafting video like this one from me. And also, I have a phone number now too, so text the number on the screen if you want to get sales, deals, and to chat with me one-on-one so I can answer your questions. Alright guys, I'll talk to you very, very soon in another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye!